Hey there to all of my paid and unpaid subscribers to Fool's Gold Confessions from an Educated Fool. This is Donald Earl Collins again. Happy New Year, everyone. It is 2026, and I don't really know what that means anymore when you're in your mid to late, starting to get toward the second half of your 50s, and it's just another year, right? Calendar changes doesn't mean anything is going to change necessarily, even when you're working to make changes, right? And you have to accept that. And there's certain things I'm going to have to accept too. This latest Substack that I've done about my job search over the last couple of years and the massive contrast between what's been happening on trying to find work to basically place full time work that I have lost because of budget cuts and low enrollments at universities like Loyola and AU, and politics of working at Loyola regarding both, the job that I originally was hired to do and doing the job that I've been doing over the years as a writer, and calling out social injustice, genocide, things of that nature. This is kind of where I'm at this point. And I don't want to belabor everything that's in my latest Substack, but I do want to point out a couple of facts and just interesting little tidbits around this, right? I've applied for a third of the job, all the jobs I've ever applied for going back to the 1980s, right? Since I was a teenager, right? When I was working under the table for my dad and over the table for weird firms like Technosort, or doing summer internships at places like General Foods, which is now Kraft Foods in Tarrytown, New York, and things of that nature. Since I started really applying for jobs in 1986 and 1987, so that's roughly 40 years. A third of all the jobs I've applied for in the last 24 months, since January 2024. Yeah, I know it's ridiculous. I have had years, and just as an example, even as bitter and as burnt out as I was the year after I finished my doctorate at Carnegie Mellon in 96, 97, the following year I applied for a total of 14 jobs. And I had 9 interviews, right? Just to give you some idea of the contrast between been my experience the last 2 years versus my experience 28 years ago, when I had job experience, I had a lot of job experience for someone my age, but not focused job experience, compared to what I've had over the last 25 or 30 years since, right? So, yeah, but yeah, it was in ageism, racism, the politics of hiring someone who called out genocide in Gaza multiple times, even before October 7th, 23, and so on and so forth. That probably has something to do with it. AI probably has something to do with it. I'm not going to belabor those points too much. It's just interesting. Today is the fifth anniversary of the insurrection at the Capitol, right? In order to change the vote, the weird, violent attempt at a coup. It's also the 22nd anniversary of me getting my second full time gig at what is now FHI 360 in working on K-16 educational reform. Went up to New York and did an interview with my former boss in New York, and we hit it off. We spent 2 hours talking about a letter of intent to Lumina Foundation for Education around, what else should go in the letter, what things do we really want to do with education reform, my background as a prof and as a graduate student and as a person who's worked on education issues prior to that job and things of that nature. And I felt really good about that interview. In fact, it's pretty much one of the few times I've come out of an interview going, I think I actually want to work here. Like really, like I could see myself doing this job. I really want to work here. I hope this works out. I wasn't. The only problem was is that the job was at FHI 360, previously known as Academy for Educational Development, and I wasn't sure about that job. Long story short, I ended up getting offered the job around the same time I got turned down for another job at an association in DC, that was very sort of white female, Betty Friedan, Gloria Steinem, second wave feminist, right? And I don't have a problem with second wave feminism, except for the fact that it excludes a lot more people than they actually thinks that it includes, particularly women of color, right? And it tends to exclude men, regardless of whether they're feminist leaning or not. So, and they seem to find weird excuses for not hiring me, right? Even though they liked everything I did, right? That's what I was told. The same, this is roughly around within a day of each other. So I ended up taking the job at my second job at AED slash FHI 360, and it really worked out. You would think that those kinds of experiences of working on education reform, running technical assistance teams, having leadership development skills, grant writing skills, doing doing selection processes and grant making work, working with foundations and bringing in other money, among among many other skills I got at that job and other jobs in the nonprofit world would lead to other work. But you know, I've noticed this since my hair started turning gray when I was 44, 45 years old, that people just assume as soon as they see the gray hair that you don't have any energy, you don't know how to do anything. How are you even standing upright? I mean, my goodness, right? That kind of thing. So let's just be honest. The ageism combined with the other isms out there is really what's kind of hurting me in this process. But I also realized something else, and this is really important, to reiterate for myself and for everyone out there who's looking for meaningful work, especially if you are over 40 years old. You know, they don't want you to know your worth. They don't want you to basically be able to say, you know what, I think I should make this amount of money in order to take care of my family, in order to pay down debt and off debt, in order to be able to do things like, oh, I don't know, go travel every once in a while, take a vacation a couple times a year, things like that. That the they that are out there want you to lowball yourself. And even when you do, and I have done some of this in this job search over the last 2 years, you end up in weird situations where you end up interviewing for a job, and just by simply being asked the question of, well, what if your experiences lend yourself to doing this job? And the moment you start talking about experiences of things like a national initiative or an international international selection process, or running technical assistance teams, or raising a couple $1 million here, a couple $100,000 there, you kind of price yourself out of the job by definition, right? Even jobs I think I'm well qualified for don't come calling because of a combination of ageism, racism, elitism, politics around hiring someone like me, maybe, and certainly the experience part. So, you know, if there's one lesson to learn in this particular case, is that applying for more jobs isn't going to get you another job. You need to bet on yourself, right? And I've been doing that in the past few months with Spinning Sage's Gold. I've been doing that with other things. But if you're actually like me, who think that, well, I would love to be able to write full time and basically make this a lucrative thing, and gifts and donations to Substack probably do help with that some. So thank you for those who have, and for those of you who can continue to afford to do so, please do so. But the truth is that most writers have another job because it's their base for being able to write, right? To write securely, to write without worrying about, well, can I pay rent next month? Or am I going to be able to help pay off my son's student loans when he's done with school in the next year or so? Those kinds of things. So, right, so you want other work. But in this case, just like with writing a book or writing some of my articles, one of the things I've had to learn, especially in the last few months, is that less is more, right? Apply for jobs you truly want, right? It's hard to do when you feel like you've been doing this for a while. Granted, I haven't been unemployed. I haven't really been unemployed the entire time. I've just not generated as much income from the work that I've been doing as I would like, right? And so I'm more or less underemployed, even though I'm working probably 40 to 60 hours a week on writing related things and research and all kinds of other stuff. And not academic research related to like trying to promote a book, trying to reach out, contacting people, all the other entrepreneurial side of writing that I don't like doing. I do know how to do. I don't do particularly great with, because writers aren't supposed to be 15 different things. They're supposed to write, right? Maybe even talk about their writing, but not much else. But anyway, less is more, right? And so unless the job really is like, wow, this seems really tailored to the skills that I have, I should definitely apply for this. Oh, this is really a good job to go into, because it is teaching, but it's teaching where I'm not just limited to intro level courses and things of that nature. Let me apply for that. Or here's a writing gig where it's essentially the same skill sets that I've been using with Al Jazeera and in my own writing and as a freelancer. Let me apply for that, right? And I realize I'm up against it. And I know how old I am. I know all those other things, but you have to still know what you're worth. And if you know what you are worth and what you bring to the table, then you shouldn't settle for less just because the market is telling you to settle for less, right? I don't expect this situation to last forever, and it can't last forever for a whole variety of reasons. But that's it. That is what it is. And I think in this day and age, where people are losing their jobs when they are for no particularly good reason at all, because they happen to be black women, because the university decided to get rid of all of its DEI programs, because which aren't for whatever reason, because they're really not committed to equity in a racial class um, race, class, gender sort of sense, right? Those kinds of things. And, a lot of us are in that situation where we've, lost work because we decided that, shooting kids 300 and some odd times, to basically terrorize an entire people, letting them flood and die from famine and all kinds of other things are terrible things, that we can't get additional work. Screw all that shit. The fact of the matter is, if you can't take a stand on those things, then the people that are not hiring you don't stand for shit either. So you don't want that job anyhow, right? That's kind of how I'm looking at things. Um, that's about it. So continue to read. I'll continue to write, and hopefully between the other stuff that I'm doing on the side and the stuff that I'm doing regarding the book and the stuff that I'm doing regarding Confessions from an Educated Fool, we can continue to meet here again, where I'm not talking about looking for work so much. I'm talking about more about the work that I'm actually doing. So take good care, and again, Happy New Year 2026.